Been introduced. The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Deputy Prime Minister. Will he make reducing child poverty a better public service target, given the statement in the speech from the throne that his government will continue to have a focus on poverty, especially child poverty?
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable. Order. Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, the government already has a number of better public services related to children's welfare and poverty. And we focused on these results because we believe they have a longer-term impact on child poverty. For instance, reducing long-term welfare dependency, increasing participation in early childhood education, reducing assaults on children, and in particular, increasing educational achievement. These targets are published regularly in the fashion that no previous government has been able to be held to account on progress on its social policy, and the member is free to contribute any good ideas that she has to enable us to, for instance, reduce assaults on children or reduce or increase educational achievement.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette King.
Well, if child poverty is a better public service target, how will the Ministerial Committee on Poverty he is to chair measure success of the cross-government approach announced as the method for focusing on poverty over the next 3 years?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, well, that committee is likely as to do the same thing as the government, and that is measure success in terms of better outcomes for real people. And that is, for instance, higher levels of educational achievement, more people having their serious housing need met, which isn't one of our formal targets, but something we'll be very focused on. And another one that's been topical recently is we'll measure success by trying to reduce the proportion of household incomes that are spent on housing costs, because those have risen over the last 20 years, particularly for low-income households.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette King.
Will the Ministerial Committee use the EU measure of poverty, as the Prime Minister did on Radio New Zealand this morning, which when applied to New Zealand indicates 180,000 children living with 7 or more items of deprivation? If not, what will the committee use to measure progress over the next 3 years?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, of course we can use that measure. There's any number of income measures available, including the EU threshold, which is a bit lower actually than the one that was discussed during the election campaign. But those measures are all readily available. They are tracked regularly by MSD. We have come up with a series of, in many ways, more challenging measures, and that is ones that are directly related to the welfare of the children, not just to the measure of the income of the household in which they live.
Supplementary question,
Honourable Annette King.
The Prime Minister stated today there will be extra money to fight child poverty. How much has he earmarked over the next 3 years to spend on this policy, and how has he calculated the amount required?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, that's all a matter for discussion. What we do know is that if you were going to try and shift some of the indicators, such as the EU measure, then you would need to spend maybe several $1 billion to get some appreciable change. What the member can be reassured about is that the government will take the investment approach. That is, we will look at putting money in where we can see there are clearly going to be payoffs in the future, as we've done with welfare dependency, as we expect to be doing with housing, and as we want to do with any number of other government interventions.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I wonder whether the Minister answered that when I asked how much he had earmarked over the next 3 years to spend on this policy. He gave nothing other than sort of airy-fairy answers about some money, sometime, somewhere.
No, on this occasion, I think to ask how much has been earmarked when budgets haven't been presented by this new government, I think the chance of getting an answer to that were not good. The the interjection question would have been better, and I'll invite the member to ask an additional supplementary question.
I've got some more. Oh,
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette King.
Why is the government, to quote the Prime Minister, just starting to produce some paperwork on child poverty and a program that they can work on when the government already has numerous reports, from one exceptional one from the Children's Commissioner?
Honourable Bill English.
Oh, well, Mr Speaker, we do, but as the member will well understand, child poverty is a complex problem. Fortunately, we are learning a lot more about what sort of interventions might work, which ones don't, and too many of them don't. And so the work the Prime Minister is referring to is the ongoing evolution, actually, of issues this government's been focusing on for the last 5 or 6 years.
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette King.
Is the Prime Minister correct when he stated this morning that 15% of children go to school hungry? If not, is he prepared to spend some of the extra cash that's in the budget, the next 3 years' budget, to provide some hard data, not just guesswork and anecdotal stories about how many children go to school hungry?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, of course the Prime Minister was correct. There is quite an interesting issue around, data, and that is that most of the data held by government is organised around government departments, not around families and communities. And that's one of the reasons why we can't know for sure how many kids turn up to school without having had breakfast. One of the challenges for the public service is to reorganise the millions and millions of dollars worth of data that it has in a way that's much more relevant to decisions about families and communities, not about government departments.
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette King.
The Prime Minister has said that there are a number of children who live in an unacceptable level of material deprivation. How will the committee identify those children so they can address their issues?
Well, Mr Speaker, that is a very good question. The measures of hardship and deprivation are by definition statistical measures. What you then have to do is turn it into identifying actual families. Now, the important point is this: the public service knows all these families. They're in our health population registers, they're in our school enrolment registers, they're in our state houses. The question is, the challenge is how to reorganise that information so that we can ensure that every single family in persistent deprivation is known to the government, and that for each one of those families we are thinking much more deeply about the interventions that will change their life course.
Order. Question. Order. I gave the additional one, not two. Question number 2, David Bennett.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance. What will be the main features of the government's economic plan during this term of Parliament?